Beatle John Lennon is dead. He was shot a short time ago outside his Manhattan apartment building. He died at Roosevelt Hospital. Police have a suspect in custody.
Welcome to Watch Mojo. And today we're discussing 10 of the most notorious and infamous crimes of the 80s.
I know my time in prison will be terrible, but I deserve whatever I get because of what I have done.
For this list, we're looking at the most well-known and newsworthy crimes of the 1980s, all of which made everyone at the time stand up and take notice. Did we leave any out? Let us know in the comments. Number 10. Bernhard Goetz, the Subway Vigilante. The headline seemed familiar for anyone who had watched the Charles Bronson classic Death Wish. Man fights back against the rise of violent New York City crime by taking the law into his own hands. Bernhard Goetz was the name, and his case incited a polarizing debate about gun control, citizens' rights, and the ability of the police to protect the community.
I think he did right.
By shooting these guys.
Sure, they tried to mug him.
I think what he did was completely wrong.
Goetz had been a past victim of violent crime and was frustrated as to what he felt was the disproportionate levels of justice applied to his attackers. So, on December 22, 1984, Goetz used an illegally concealed handgun to shoot 4 men who were attempting to rob him on the subway.
I wanted to kill those guys, I wanted to maim those guys, I wanted to make them suffer in every way I could.
One of the men was left with permanent physical and mental damage after the encounter. Number 9. Paul Castellano gets whacked. Paul Castellano was a notorious gangster who made a number of enemies during his rise to the top of the Gambino crime family. This isn't exactly surprising given the violent and unpredictable life of organized crime, but there's one code of ethics that is predictable within that world: getting permission for a hit. This was not done by an ambitious man named John Gotti, who organized Castellano's assassination in December 1985.
The question is whether his death will spark a new mafia war in New York or be the end of one.
Gotti would take over as head of the Gambino organization shortly after Castellano's murder on the 16th of that month. But it wasn't long before Gotti himself was almost a victim.
John Gotti changes the whole dynamic of organized crime. No longer the old Sicilian style, make money, not headlines, stay in the shadows. The idea was, what's the point of being a gangster if nobody knows who you are?
He narrowly escaped a car bombing on April 13th of the following year, planted by a rival family due to Gotti's brazen initiative. Number 8. The Billionaire Boys Club.
Do you remember Joe Hunt I was telling you about?
Oh, right. Yes, Dean told me you're a trader of sorts?
Yeah, that's right, Miss Levin. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Social clubs are great. Ponzi schemes are not. But what about murder? These all came into play when it came to the Billionaire Boys Club, a corrupt organization that defrauded investors in order to finance the extravagant lifestyles of its young hotshot members. The BBC also made headlines for 2 high-profile murder cases, one of which involved the club's founder, Joe Hunt. Hunt was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole for his involvement in the alleged murder of Ron Levin, a club investor. Levin's body was never found, while Hunt maintains his innocence, claiming that the former actually fled the country in order to escape prosecution for fraud.
Murder, but the defense the entire time was that he's actually alive and that he's actually a con artist who's conned his way into skipping out on bilking this Billionaire Boys Club.
Number 7. The 1983 United States Senate bombing.
No injuries because the Senate business had concluded earlier than expected.
The Resistance Conspiracy was a far-left terrorist group that claimed responsibility for an attack that left Washington, D.C. shaken and terrified on the evening of November 7, 1983. The group had planted a bomb on the north wing of the United States Senate building, resulting in heavy structural and shrapnel damage.
They had a communique that they published after they bombed the Capitol, and they said explicitly, tonight we bombed the Capitol. We chose not to kill any senators this time.
The incident was carried out by the Resistance Conspiracy as a means of violent protest against the country's military political actions in Lebanon and Grenada. 6 members of the group would be arrested after a nearly 5-year investigation, while the Senate itself would greatly increase security measures as a result of the attack. Number 6. The Life and Crimes of Jeffrey Dahmer.
He was listening to my heart because at a point he told me he was going to eat my heart at that point. I hit him and I ran.
The case of one Jeffrey Dahmer may be one of the best known on this list. thanks not only to the viciousness of his crimes, but also his elevated profile in the media.
Pure evil, but you'd never know it by looking at him. But when you hear him, that's another story.
Dahmer was given no less than 16 life sentences for what he did to 17 victims between the years 1978 and 1991. A complicated home life and an increasing reliance upon alcohol defined Dahmer's early years. But it wouldn't be long before the man's modus operandi of drugging and assaulting young men would beef up the killer's body count. Jeffrey Dahmer barely served 3 years of his 1992 sentence, however, as he was murdered by a fellow inmate, Christopher Scarver, on November 28, 1994. Number 5. Ronald Reagan is shot. Today, John Hinckley Jr. is out of psychiatric imprisonment and performing music on his YouTube channel.
All us striving to be free, we're in harmony.
But flashing back to March 30th, 1981, Hinckley fired upon former President Ronald Reagan and his entourage while they were leaving a Washington, D.C. hotel.
As soon as that first shot goes off, they grab the president and they throw him into the car.
The attack left Reagan seriously wounded, a member of his Secret Service shot, and Press Secretary James Brady partially paralyzed.
All 3 survived, but Brady had permanent brain damage.
Brady would die as a result of complications from his injuries many years later, while Hinckley was found not guilty by reason of insanity due to his unhealthy obsession with actress Jodie Foster. Number 4. Ricky Kasso, Acid King. If you're unfamiliar with the term satanic panic, it refers to a period in the United States defined by conservative reactions to Dungeons and Dragons and heavy metal music, as well as paranoia surrounding perceived ritual abuse involving young people.
Dungeons and Dragons debuted in 1974. It became a hit with many adolescents, but critics claimed it was an invitation to devil worship.
The witchcraft, the demonism, the spells.
This moral panic also had connections to real-life crime, such as the case of Ricky Kasso, aka the Acid King, who was a local drug user and occasional dealer in New York.
Long Island, New York, couple said today that it was the devil, drugs, and rock and roll that led their son to ritual murder.
In 1984, Kasso stabbed his friend Gary Lauwers, telling Lauwers to profess his love for Satan. Prior to this crime, Kasso had dabbled in grave desecration and other occult interests, and the story of his shocking murder of Lauwers added to the satanic panic that was already raging throughout the country. Number 3. The death of a Beatle.
This evening, John Lennon arrived at the emergency room at the Roosevelt Hospital. He was dead at the time of his arrival.
We mentioned earlier how John Hinckley Jr. used his obsession with Jodie Foster as a motivation for the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan. Mark David Chapman possessed a similarly dangerous obsession when he was successful in his aim to shoot former Beatle John Lennon, while the latter was walking into his residence after a recording session.
Lennon was shot and killed at about 11 o'clock last night outside his apartment building. News of the Lennon shooting, of course, spread quickly around the world.
Chapman was arrested after the fact with a copy of J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye on his person, and was quoted as holding that book's protagonist, Holden Caulfield, as someone he was trying to emulate.
Chapman started talking about a little person inside of him and a big person inside of him. The big person has been winning the battle up to now, but tonight the little person won.
Lennon's fame, fortune, and his infamous quote about how the Beatles were, quote, more popular than Jesus, allegedly pushed Chapman to fire the fatal shots that took Lennon's life on December 8, 1980. Number 2. Richard Ramirez, the Night Stalker. There have been a number of serial killers with monikers that orbit that of the Night Stalker. These include the original Night Stalker, Joseph James D'Angelo, and Delroy Grant, the British Night Stalker who terrorized his populace from 1992 to 2009. The 1980s laid claim to the crimes of a man who would go on to forever be associated with the title, Richard Ramirez.
Police today arrested the man they believe is a so-called Night Stalker.
With a man who may be the Night Stalker in custody, California residents may sleep a little easier.
The Night Stalker's criminal activity in the Southern California area was the gruesome stuff of nightmares, despite the fact that he was only active for about a year before his arrest in 1985. Ramirez would be convicted on all charges and sentenced to death in 1989. But the Night Stalker would die in prison before that sentence could be carried out.
But Ramirez had the last word.
Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, make sure you go into your settings and switch on notifications. Number 1. Adam Walsh, A Father's Grief. No parent should ever have to bury their child, and the tragic loss of 6-year-old Adam Walsh affected everyone when the news story broke back in 1981. The son of future America's Most Wanted creator John Walsh was abducted from a mall in Hollywood, Florida on July 27, 1981.
And I kissed Adam goodbye that morning and never saw him again.
A case of mistaken identity resulted in Adam being escorted out of the mall with another group of children, while his mother was in a different section of a Sears department store.
So Reve went, and they would not even announce Adam over the store intercom. They went, he's around somewhere, he'll find him. That's how bad it was in '81.
It was then when Adam was taken by notorious serial killer Otis Toole, who allegedly did the unspeakable. John Walsh would go on to devote his life to criminal victim advocacy in the wake of his personal tragedy.
Does it give you some measure of peace to know that in your loss, other children's lives have been spared?
I think we've saved children. We've caught people that hurt children.
Do you agree with our picks? Check out this other recent clip from WatchMojo, and be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.